The Kareth Dominion had always believed it stood above all other civilizations. Their starships were elegant, their cities rose like crystal towers, and their culture valued strength, discipline, and sharp intelligence. Among them, the royal families were known for their pride. None were more proud than the household of High Matron Valora, ruler of the Azure Court. On the day the humans arrived, every corner of the Azure Court buzzed with excitement. Visitors from distant planets were rare, but humans were even rarer. Many Kareth nobles had only heard of them through second-hand reports. A young, growing species with strange habits, unpredictable courage, and far too much curiosity for their own good. The Azure Hall, where great ceremonies were held, gleamed with blue stone and gold light. High Matron Valora sat on her raised platform, calm and regal, observing everything. Her daughter, Princess Serral, stood beside her. Serral was young but already carried herself with the confidence of someone who believed she understood the universe better than most. When the doors opened and the human delegation walked in, a ripple of interest moved through the crowd. 3 humans entered first, diplomats, dressed in dark suits. Behind them walked the one person who drew every eye in the hall. Sergeant Elias Voss, the human warrior chosen to represent Earth in the upcoming ceremonial trial. Elias was not the tallest human, nor the strongest looking. His build was lean, not bulky. His brown hair was short and ordinary. His face seemed calm, almost too calm for someone entering a hall filled with alien nobles studying him like a curiosity. He wore a simple dark uniform with light armor plates. Compared to the glowing ceremonial armor of the Kareth guards, his equipment looked basic. Princess Serral watched him with a faint smirk. She had expected someone more impressive, someone who would look like a warrior from the great Kareth tales. Instead, she saw a quiet man with careful eyes, taking in every detail of the hall. "How strange," she said loudly enough for many to hear, "that humanity sends such a soft-looking creature to stand in our sacred arena." Some nobles laughed, others covered their mouths, unsure if they should show amusement. Elias did not look at Serral. Instead, he continued walking, following the diplomats, his steps steady. High Matron Valora raised a hand, and the hall fell silent. "Welcome, representatives of Earth," she said. Her voice carried through the hall, clear and firm. "We are honored to host you in our court. Today, we begin the ceremonial trials that will test the strength, mind, and spirit of your chosen warrior." Elias bowed his head politely. The Kareth bowed very differently with sweeping gestures. But Elias's simple bow showed respect in his own way. Valora noticed it, and so did the nobles. Some nodded respectfully. Others frowned, unfamiliar with the gesture. Serral, however, only smiled more sharply. "So this is the human warrior your world is proud of," she said, her voice dripping with mocking curiosity. "He looks like he would struggle to lift a training staff, let alone face our trials." A murmur passed through the hall. Human diplomats shifted uncomfortably, but Elias still did not react to her words. Instead, he allowed his eyes to travel slowly across the hall. He noted the layout of the pillars, the positions of the guards, the polished floor that might affect footing, and even the placement of the Kareth banners. Every detail mattered. Every detail could help him prepare. Princess Serral felt irritated by his lack of response. She stepped forward, looking him up and down with exaggerated interest. "Warrior," she said, "do you understand the danger of these trials? They are not games. They are not simple tests. Many species would fail the first challenge alone. Perhaps humans do not understand what true discipline looks like." Elias finally turned to her. His expression did not change. He did not look angry. He did not look offended. He simply looked thoughtful. "I understand what a trial is," he said in calm, simple English. "I also understand respect. So I will give my best effort." His voice was steady, without trembling or hesitation. The translator device carried his words clearly through the hall. Some nobles blinked in surprise at how plain and controlled he sounded. Serral opened her mouth to continue, but her mother lifted a hand again. "Enough," High Matron Valora said. "The trial is not meant for insults. It is meant to reveal truth. The princess lowered her eyes, though annoyance flickered across her face. Valora stood and approached the edge of the platform. Her robe flowed behind her like waves of blue light. Human warrior, you may inspect the arena before the first trial begins. Elias bowed his head. Thank you. He walked toward the training grounds that connected to the hall. As he did, Kareth nobles whispered among themselves. He seems too calm, one said. Maybe he does not understand the difficulty, said another. Or maybe humans hide fear well, someone else suggested. Princess Cyril watched him with a mixture of disbelief and irritation. She had been taught that warriors showed their pride boldly. They stood tall, made loud declarations, and proved themselves through confidence before they even stepped into the arena. But this human seemed to believe in silence and observation. To her, it looked like weakness. To others, it looked like mystery. Elias stepped into the arena area. It was a large, circular space, with sections dedicated to different test types. Some areas contained climbing surfaces and balance beams. Others held puzzle stations made of glowing Kareth crystals. There were gravity plates in one section, shifting pressure fields designed to test endurance. Everything was crafted with care and tradition. He moved slowly, touching nothing, simply studying. His eyes tracked movement patterns on the ground. He looked up at suspension beams. He took careful breaths as he estimated distances and angles. His mind worked quietly, almost invisibly. Valora observed him with growing curiosity. He does not move like someone unprepared, she murmured to her advisor. He calculates. He watches. He learns before acting. Her advisor nodded politely, though the tone remained skeptical. Perhaps that is simply how humans behave. We do not know much about their warriors. Behind them, Cyril scoffed softly. Or perhaps he studies because he fears what he sees. A true warrior would not need to stare at everything like a confused animal. Valora turned her head just slightly, enough to show her daughter that she had heard. Her voice remained calm. Cyril, do not confuse silence with fear. Many great warriors say little. Cyril pressed her lips together, but did not answer. Elias eventually returned to the hall entrance. Nothing about him had changed. His breathing remained slow, his steps balanced, his expression neutral. The High Matron addressed him again. Have you completed your inspection? Yes, Elias replied. It is a beautiful arena. Very well designed. The compliment surprised many of the nobles. The Kareth took pride in their craftsmanship, but they had expected a human to look confused or overwhelmed. Praise had not been predicted. Valora nodded, pleased by his sincerity. You will begin the first trial shortly. Before we proceed, allow our court one final question. She looked at her daughter. Cyril, since your curiosity is strong today, you may speak. The princess stepped forward again, though this time with less arrogance than before. Human, she said. Why did you not react when I mocked you? Most species would defend their honor immediately. But you said nothing. Do humans not care when they are insulted? Elias looked at her for a long, silent moment. Not a hostile silence, more like he was choosing the simplest and clearest words. Where I come from, he said. A warrior does not need to answer every remark. A warrior answers with actions. The hall grew quiet. Cyril blinked, taken aback. She had expected defensiveness, or apology, or anger. She had not expected simple clarity. Valora's eyes sharpened with new interest. For the first time since Elias entered, the atmosphere in the hall shifted. What had started as amusement and mockery now carried something else. Curiosity. Maybe respect. Maybe even a hint of anticipation. The High Matron lifted her hand. Prepare the trial, she commanded. Let the truth of this human warrior be revealed. Elias stepped forward, calm and ready, and the Kareth court watched him with eyes far more serious than before. The arena lights brightened, filling the circular space with a soft blue glow. The Kareth nobles gathered along the upper balcony, eager to see what the human warrior would do. Some expected quick failure. Others hoped to witness something strange and new. Princess Cyril stood near the front, her arms crossed, eyes narrowed with confident doubt. Sergeant Elias Voss walked into the center of the arena. His expression remained calm, but inside, he felt the steady rise of adrenaline. He had trained for dangerous missions before, but never had he represented his entire species in front of an alien court. Still, fear did not control him. He understood his purpose, and purpose steadied his heart. High Matron Valora raised her hand. "The first trial," she announced, her voice echoing through the hall, "is the course of shifting paths. It tests balance, quick reactions, and the ability to read movement before it happens." Elias looked toward the far wall as a loud mechanical hum began. Panels in the floor opened, and a long walkway rose from below, thin platforms arranged like a twisting snake. They hovered slightly above the ground, supported by magnetic force. Some moved slowly, left and right. Others rotated in place. Some lifted and lowered unpredictably. Even from the balcony, people could see how challenging it was. A Kareth announcer explained. "Warriors must cross the walkway without falling. If they fall, they must begin again. 3 failures end the trial," Cyril whispered to those near her. "He will fall on the first attempt." Valora did not comment, but her eyes remained on Elias. The walkway shifted again, plates rearranging themselves into a new pattern. Elias studied the new layout, noting rhythm, speed, and timing. He had done balance courses before, but none with floating alien platforms that moved like living creatures. Still, he took a slow breath and stepped forward. The moment his foot landed on the first plate, the entire walkway reacted. Some platforms sped up, others slowed down. One rotated sharply, trying to throw off his balance. Elias remained focused. He bent his knees slightly, letting his center of gravity stay low. His arms balanced wide, not elegant like the Kareth, but steady. The nobles leaned forward. A plate jerked under him, and a gasp rose from the crowd. But Elias shifted his weight instantly, letting the movement carry him instead of resisting it. He stepped onto the next platform, and then another. Princess Cyril frowned. "He is more flexible than he looks." Elias moved carefully but efficiently. He did not rush, did not hesitate. He read each platform's movement before stepping. His footfalls were light but controlled, and even when the walkway suddenly rearranged, he adapted as if he had trained for this exact moment. Halfway across, the difficulty increased. Multiple plates rotated at once, forming a complicated spiral that challenged both balance and timing. Elias paused, watching the rotation pattern. Then he stepped into the spiral, letting each turn guide him naturally. The Kareth murmured in surprise. "He reads the arena like a puzzle. He adjusts faster than expected. Humans have good instincts." Cyril let out a frustrated breath. "It is only the first trial. Anyone could do this." But she knew that wasn't true. Many warriors had failed this trial on their first attempt. Some even fell more than once. Yet the human continued moving, as if failure was simply not a thought in his mind. When he reached the final stretch, the walkway began tilting at a steep angle. Elias leaned forward, almost running the last few steps. One wrong foot placement would send him tumbling, but he pushed through with quiet determination. And then he stepped off the walkway onto solid ground. The nobles erupted in noise, some cheering, some shocked, some whispering in disbelief. High Matron Valora nodded with clear approval. "The human has passed the first trial." Cyril's face remained neutral, but her eyes were sharp with irritation. Elias exhaled and waited for the next command. Valora continued. "The second trial begins now. The puzzle of shifting light." The arena dimmed, and crystal pillars rose from the ground. Each pillar glowed with a different color: blue, red, green, gold, and their light beams crossed in complicated patterns. The goal was simple: align the crystals so that the light formed a complete ring on the floor. But the crystals moved randomly, and touching them triggered new patterns. Kareth warriors usually solved this trial through intuition and experience. Humans had never seen Kareth light crystal technology before. Elias stepped toward the pillars. Cyril whispered to her mother, "This is where he will fail. Only Kareth minds can read the pattern logic. Humans are slow thinkers." Velora did not respond, but her expression showed she was curious about how Elias would approach the challenge. The puzzle activated. Light beams flickered. Colors shifted. Shapes danced. Some beams blocked others, making the layout confusing. The human diplomat watching from the side looked worried, but Elias did not move toward the crystals immediately. Instead, he crouched slightly and looked at the light on the floor. He watched how colors overlapped and how the beams reacted to motion. He studied the problem as if it were a mechanical system rather than a mystical test. Then he stepped forward and touched the first crystal. Instantly, the colors around him shifted, forming a new pattern. Elias did not seem startled. He stepped to another crystal and adjusted it. The light beams split, creating a half-formed circle. Velora's advisor murmured, "He is not acting randomly. He sees something." Cyril watched closely, arms still crossed. "He is guessing, nothing more." But it was not guessing. Elias had already learned the basic behavior of the crystals after his first few touches. He now moved faster, turning one crystal, stepping to another, following the behavior patterns he discovered. He used logic, observation, and memory to create order from chaos. Within minutes, the circle on the floor grew larger. The light tightened, moving toward alignment. Nobles leaned forward, some forgetting their skepticism completely. "He is solving it. He adapts quickly. Humans learn in strange ways." Cyril's jaw tightened. She tried not to show frustration, but her eyes betrayed her. She had mocked him earlier, certain he was slow and weak. But now, watching him calmly adjust crystal after crystal, she felt something unexpected: doubt. Finally, Elias placed his hand on the last crystal and turned it gently. The beams snapped into perfect alignment. The room lit with a complete, glowing ring of light. A chime sounded. The puzzle was solved. The hall burst into excited voices, louder than before. Even some skeptical nobles clapped lightly. Velora smiled a small but true smile. The human has passed the second trial. Elias stepped back as the crystals sank into the ground. He was tired. Sweat touched his forehead. But he stood straight, ready for whatever came next. Velora's voice filled the hall again. "The third trial is the endurance chamber, where the gravity shifts in unpredictable waves. Warriors must complete the challenge without collapsing." At the far end of the arena, a set of doors slid open. A chamber filled with soft white light waited beyond. Elias entered. The door closed behind him. Princess Cyril smirked confidently. "No human can endure this. Even our warriors find it difficult. He will fall quickly." But inside the chamber, Elias braced himself as the floor began to shake with subtle changes in weight. First, gravity increased gently, pressing against his legs. Then it lightened, almost lifting him off the ground. Then it surged again, heavier than before. Each shift pulled at his muscles. His breathing grew harder. His legs began to burn. He focused on steady breaths, counting in his mind. He kept his stance low, balancing himself against the shifting pressure. The intensity increased. Waves of gravity flowing like invisible tides. Sweat dripped down his face. His arms trembled. His knees shook. On the balcony, nobles watched with mixed expressions. He is holding. But for how long? He is only human. The chamber will break him soon. Cyril spoke with confidence. He will collapse any moment. But he did not. The chamber grew harsher. Gravity waves slammed down like heavy sand. Elias clenched his teeth but refused to fall. His body complained, begged, warned him to stop, but he ignored it. He remembered why he was there. He remembered every mission that required pushing past physical limits. Time stretched. Finally, the chamber door slid open. Elias stumbled out, exhausted but still standing. The hall erupted again. Many nobles stood in disbelief. Velora rose to her feet. "The human has passed all 3 trials of the first day." For the first time, even Cyril looked speechless. Elias bowed his head, breathing heavily but steady. The Kareth court no longer saw him as a soft creature. They saw him as a warrior. The sun of Kareth Prime dipped lower in the sky, casting long beams of golden light into the azure court. The ceremonial trials for the day had ended, but the excitement inside the hall did not fade. Instead, it grew stronger. The nobles gathered in small groups, whispering about the human who had done what few expected. Sergeant Elias Voss had passed all 3 trials of the first day. The news spread through the palace like wind through open windows. Servants whispered it in the hallways. Guards spoke about it at their posts. Even the younger nobles, who usually cared more about fashion and status than warrior traditions, discussed the human with bright curiosity. Only Princess Cyril remained still. She stood at the edge of the balcony, looking down at the now empty arena. Her arms were crossed, her expression unreadable. She did not speak to anyone. She simply watched the place where the human had stood, where he had moved through the trials with a calm strength she had not expected. High Matron Valora approached quietly. "Cyril," she said, her voice gentle but firm. "You look troubled." The princess kept her eyes on the arena. "I am not troubled. I simply do not understand how a human did so well. They are not like us. They are not warriors by nature." Valora raised an eyebrow. "You believe only the Kareth can be strong?" Cyril hesitated. "No. But I believed we were stronger. And now you doubt that belief?" Cyril said nothing. Her mother placed a hand on her shoulder. "Strength does not belong to one species. It grows wherever spirit and determination live." Cyril's jaw tightened. He did not even react to my words. It was like he did not care. "Or," Valora said softly, "he cared so much for his purpose that he did not waste energy on insults." Cyril had no answer. Meanwhile, in a quieter chamber far from the balcony, Elias sat on a bench, drinking water and recovering from the trials. His breathing had steadied, though his body still felt heavy with exhaustion. The gravity chamber had pushed him to his limits, but he had not let himself fall. Not while so many eyes watched. Not while he represented humanity. The human diplomats entered the room. "Sergeant Voss," one said, "you performed incredibly. Earth will be proud." Elias nodded. "Thank you. But this is only the beginning." "Yes," the diplomat said. "But you made the right impression today. The Kareth respect, strength, and discipline. You showed both." Elias took another deep breath. "When is the next trial?" "Tomorrow. But tonight, the High Matron has requested your presence at the evening gathering." Elias blinked. "A gathering?" "Yes. It is a formal event where nobles speak, share thoughts, and discuss the trials. They want to see you." Elias nodded slowly. "Understood." After cleaning up and changing into a simple ceremonial uniform provided by the Kareth, Elias walked toward the grand hall. The gathering was already in motion. Lights shimmered above like stars trapped inside the ceiling. Tables displayed glowing fruits, drinks, and dishes from various worlds. Nobles stood in clusters, talking excitedly. As soon as Elias entered, every head turned. Conversations paused. Eyes watched him curiously. Some nobles bowed politely. Others simply stared. A few whispered to each other, trying to guess what he would do next. Elias remained calm. He nodded respectfully to the room and walked to the area where his diplomats stood. But before he could join them, High Matron Valora approached him. The hall quieted slightly. "Sergeant Elias Voss," she said warmly, "your performance today impressed many in this court. We thank you for your presence." Elias bowed his head. "I am honored, High Matron." Valora smiled. "Tell me honestly, human warrior, were the trials difficult?" "Yes," Elias answered simply. "But they were fair." Several nobles nodded, appreciating his humble honesty. Princess Cyril stepped forward, her expression unreadable. "I wish to ask the human a question," she said. The room grew even quieter. Valora nodded. "You may speak." Cyril faced Elias directly. "Human warrior, when you stood in the gravity chamber, everyone expected you to fall. Even I did. But you did not. Why?" Her tone held no mockery this time, only genuine curiosity. Elias thought for a moment. "Because I have learned something important." he said. Falling is not the same as failing. But giving up before you fall, that is failure. The hall remained silent for a heartbeat. Then a soft wave of murmurs swept through the nobles. That is a strong belief. A disciplined mind. Humans think differently. Sarah looked at him, and for the first time, her eyes showed respect or something close to it. Before anyone else could speak, the hall lights dimmed, and a soft chime rang out. Attendants entered carrying a round crystal orb, glowing with deep purple light. Velora raised her hand. The time has come for the psychic intimidation trial demonstration. Elias blinked. Demonstration? Velora nodded. Tomorrow, this will be your final trial. Tonight, you will witness how it works. The nobles formed a wide circle. A young Kareth warrior stepped into the center. She placed both hands on the glowing orb. Instantly, the air around her shimmered. A psychic projection formed a swirling mass of shapes, sounds, and shadows designed to overwhelm the mind. The warrior stiffened slightly but stayed steady. She endured the projections for several long seconds before stepping back, releasing the orb. The illusion faded. Velora spoke. The purpose of this trial is to measure inner strength. Physical strength means nothing here. Only the mind matters. Elias studied the orb intensely. And humans, one noble added softly, have never faced our psychic techniques. Their minds may not withstand it. Soril spoke again. Human, are you afraid of this final trial? Elias looked at the orb, watching its soft pulse. I respect it, he said. Fear can be useful, but I am not controlled by it. Surprised whispers rose around the room. Velora smiled. Good answer. But in Cyril's eyes, something new appeared: concern. Later that evening, as the gathering wound down, Cyril approached Elias again. This time alone. She hesitated before speaking. Human, she began quietly. Tomorrow's trial is not like the others. The psychic chamber reaches deep into the mind. It shows illusions based on your fears, doubts, memories, things even we struggle with. Elias nodded. I understand. No, Cyril said firmly, you do not. Even Kareth warriors with years of training sometimes fail. You have no experience with our psychic fields. If you fall, no one will blame you. Elias looked at her with calm eyes. I am not here to avoid difficulties. I am here to represent my people. Cyril lowered her eyes. For the first time, she seemed unsure. You are strange, she said quietly. You do not fight like us. You do not speak like us. You do not fear like us. Maybe that is why I am here, Elias replied softly. Cyril looked up at him. You will face the psychic trial alone. There will be no help. Elias nodded again. I know. Cyril stepped back, watching him with a mix of frustration and admiration. Then, may your mind be strong, human. Elias bowed his head respectfully. Thank you. As he walked away, Cyril watched him long after he left the hall. She did not want to admit it, not yet, but something deep inside her had changed. She no longer wanted the human to fail. For the first time in her life, she wanted someone not of her species to succeed. Because the human warrior was not just strong, he was something else, something she did not fully understand. And tomorrow, in the psychic chamber, she would learn what that something truly was. The morning of the final trial arrived with a quiet, heavy tension in the air. The sky above the azure court glowed pale blue, and the sun rose behind crystal towers, shining through them like liquid fire. Every corner of the palace seemed to buzz with anticipation. Servants moved quietly, guards stood straighter, and nobles filled the balconies long before the trial began. Today was the psychic intimidation trial, the most respected trial in Kareth tradition. It was the one challenge that could not be passed by physical strength or quick reflexes. It demanded mental courage. It exposed weaknesses that many hid even from themselves. No one knew how a human mind would react. Sergeant Elias Voss walked toward the arena gates with calm steps. He had slept very little the night before. Not because of fear, but because he had spent hours preparing his thoughts, grounding his mind, and reminding himself why he was here. He was here for Earth. He was here because humanity was still young among the stars, and every action he took shaped how the universe saw them. He was here because giving up was never an option. As he approached the door to the psychic chamber, he saw High Matron Valora and Princess Sarl waiting. Valora stood tall, her robe flowing elegantly. Sarl looked tense, her hands clasped in front of her. "Human warrior," Valora said, "today you face the hardest trial. This challenge reaches into the deepest parts of the mind. I must ask, are you prepared?" Elias nodded. "Yes." Valora studied his face for a moment, then stepped aside. "Then you may enter." Sarl stepped forward quickly before he could pass her. "Human," she said quietly, "I spoke harshly the first day. I judged you too quickly. But now, I believe you can do this." Elias gave a small, calm smile. "Thank you, Princess." She took a breath. "Be careful." With that, Elias walked past them into the chamber. The door slid shut behind him with a soft hiss. Inside the psychic chamber, the chamber was a perfect circle, its walls covered in smooth, reflective crystal. In the center of the room floated a large orb of violet light, the same kind he had seen during the demonstration. Its glow pulsed slowly, like a calm heartbeat. A voice echoed through hidden speakers. "Sergeant Elias Voss of Earth. When the orb activates, remain standing as long as possible. The trial ends when your mind can no longer resist the psychic pressure." Elias took a slow breath and stepped closer to the orb. The moment his fingers touched the glowing surface, the room vanished. The illusions began. He found himself standing in a strange, shifting landscape. The sky above twisted like storm clouds made of smoke. The ground cracked and moved under his feet. Sounds echoed from all sides, whispers, footsteps, distant cries. The illusions were meant to confuse the mind, provoke fear, and force the warrior to confront their deepest doubts. Elias felt a wave of pressure push into his thoughts. Images flashed suddenly: a ruined battlefield, smoke rising, shadows moving past him. Then a voice whispered, "You cannot win. You do not belong here." Elias steadied his breathing. "This is not real," he said quietly. "Focus." The battlefield melted away, replaced by a dark corridor. The walls narrowed, pressing in. A sense of suffocation tried to grab hold of him, but Elias kept walking forward. The scene shifted again, this time to deep water. Cold, endless, murky. Shapes swam below. Something brushed against his leg. The fear rose slowly, like ice climbing his spine. He closed his eyes for a second and remembered training back on Earth. He remembered moments when panic could cost lives. He remembered forcing himself to push through the fear. Step by step, breath by breath. When he opened his eyes, the water illusion weakened, crackling like broken glass. But the psychic orb fought harder. New illusions appeared faster, sharper, more emotional. He saw his failures, his regrets, moments where he could not save someone, moments where he wished he had been stronger. Each illusion hit like a heavy weight, but through it all, Elias kept his feet planted on the ground. He did not collapse. He did not look away. He faced every image, every fear, every doubt, because he had made a choice. He would not let the trial decide who he was. He would decide that himself. The orb pulsed brighter, pouring even stronger psychic force into his mind. The air trembled. The room vibrated. Every illusion intensified, but Elias remained. Slowly, the illusions began to crack again. Light leaked through the fractures. The smoke faded. The voices weakened. Finally, with a final pulse of defiance, Elias pushed back, not with anger, but with calm strength. The illusions shattered completely. The chamber dissolved, and he stood once again in the real room, hands still touching the orb, knees shaking from exhaustion but still standing. The trial had ended. Outside the chamber, silence filled the azure court. Every noble leaned forward in breathless anticipation as the chamber door slid open, and Elias stepped out. His legs trembled. His arms shook slightly. Sweat dripped from his forehead, but his back was straight, his gaze steady, and he stood tall, still unbroken. A wave of astonishment washed through the hall. He made it. He endured the full duration. No outsider has ever passed the psychic trial. High Matron Valora stood slowly, awe plain on her face. Sergeant Elias Voss, she said loudly, you have done what even many Kareth cannot. You have stood against the mind's greatest challenge and remained firm. The hall erupted in noise, shocked shouts, cheers, excited voices overlapping. Elias bowed his head respectfully. Princess Cyril stepped forward, eyes wide, voice soft with disbelief. You endured all of it? Elias nodded gently. I had to. And you never broke, she whispered. Not even once. Valora raised her hand, silencing the hall. Hear me, all of the Azure Court. Today, a human warrior has proven strength of body, mind, and spirit. By tradition, such a warrior earns respect equal to our own. She turned toward her daughter. Cyril, come forward. The hall grew quiet again. Elias looked confused, unsure what was happening. Valora's voice carried a deep, formal tone. You mocked this human on the day he arrived. You saw him as soft and weak, but he has shown honor, courage, and resilience worthy of our highest respect. Cyril swallowed, her throat tight. By our tradition, Valora continued, one who misjudges a true warrior must make a formal gesture of apology and recognition. Elias shifted awkwardly. That isn't neck. Valora lifted a hand, stopping him gently. Then, with a voice clear enough to echo through the hall, she commanded, Cyril, on your knees. A stunned silence fell over the entire court. This gesture was not humiliation. It was a sacred act of apology and honor among the Kareth, offered only to those who proved extraordinary worth. Cyril lowered herself gracefully, kneeling before Elias in full view of the court. Her voice was steady, respectful, and sincere. Sergeant Elias Voss of Earth, she said, I judged you wrongly. I mocked your strength because I could not see it. But now I see clearly. I offer you my apology and my respect. Elias bowed deeply in return. The human gesture of equal honor. You owe me nothing, he said softly. We all learn. Even I did. Cyril looked up at him with a faint smile, one filled not with arrogance, but genuine admiration. The hall erupted in applause, cheers, and proud Kareth chants. High Matron Valora raised her hand one last time. Let it be known across the Dominion. Humanity has earned a place of honor among us. Today, a bond is formed not through power, but through courage. Elias stood in the center of the arena, surrounded by glowing light and roaring voices. For the first time in Kareth history, aliens looked at a human not as a newcomer, not as a curiosity, but as a true warrior.